I'll be reading through the PDF on the passé composé tense to make your learning easier and point out the important parts of this PDF, so I propose we start. This is not the official video, of course. This is more like a study companion, and this is how this video should be understood. Anyway, let's start. What does the passé composé do? Well, that's the first question. So, in French, there are three main past tenses. This is just one of them. The passé composé typically is the one you'll be using most often. It serves to tell people something that happened or something you did. I painted the side of the house, I bought a new car, I walked the dog, all these types of usual things. As it says on the PDF, it tells us it expresses the existence of an action that took place in the past. So it doesn't really matter if it happened a second ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It has nothing to do with it. And it also has nothing to do with the fact whether the action lasted for a while or not. Doesn't matter if the walk with the dog lasted for 5 hours or 5 minutes. So we're not focusing on the action, we're focusing on the message. What are you telling people? You're telling people something you did or that happened. I walked the dog, it rained, I ate a sandwich, all these types of things. So in the example, aujourd'hui j'ai promené le chien, today I walked the dog, it could have been 20 years ago. There are two important things here. J'ai promené. The sound E is very rarely symbolized by AI in French. It's only on verbs it usually does that. J'ai, it's like je sais, I know, j'ai, I have, and je vais, I go. There are three of them where it sounds like E, and they're all spelled AI. J'ai promené, et. Your two E's have to be exactly the same. J'ai promené, because they do contain information. We don't want to go all the way to we want to stay on E. J'ai promené, it's similar to the sound give, Aujourd'hui, j'ai promené le chien. And as it says, the walk with the dog may have lasted for 5 hours or 5 minutes, but we're simply telling about this action in the past. You're communicating information about a certain action that took place in the past. And the passé composé does indeed focus on actions and facts. And the example at the bottom of the page tells us, Hier j'ai acheté un manteau et j'ai parlé avec un ami. You're informing someone of something you did. I bought a coat and I spoke with a friend. That's the purpose of this past tense. So as we can see, we're stating the existence of individual actions. And that's the first page done already. Next is how to build the passé composé. We're on page 2. Typically, you'll use the verb avoir, so that's the verb to have, and être, that's the verb to be, to build it. So it's like in English, I have been, I have done, I have bought. It's the same have, j'ai. So we see in the first examples here, j'ai parlé, I have spoken. Same thing as in English. Although in English, we also say I spoke. So that there isn't a perfect match of the tenses. In American English, we have a tendency to use spoke rather than I have spoken. But in British English, we really make a strong distinction, but we can consider them the same message. I have spoken or I spoke. I've spoken with Lucy, I spoke with Lucy. It's sort of the same thing, but not always. So that's essentially what it translates to. J'ai parlé translates to I spoke and I have spoken. It's the same sort of thing. J'ai parlé, so we see in the middle column, I have, j'ai, that's the verb having in the present tense. I have, you have, he has, we have. Second row, tu as parlé, you have spoken, or you spoke, it could be translated to that also. Nous avons parlé, we have spoken. And finally, je suis arrivé, which is different. Here we notice that we're using the verb être, the verb to be. It's slightly different, and we'll see why we use that in a second. But in the meantime, we'll concentrate on the verb parler. Why have I chosen, the verb parler, to speak, as an example? Because it reproduces the behavior of all the ER verbs, of which there are thousands. So if you understand that one, you understand thousands. Parler, that's the name of the action of speaking. Parler is what we call infinitive. It's the name of the action of speaking. Parler. So if I want to take the action of speaking and I want to inform someone that I have spoken or that I spoke, I saw Lucy in town and I spoke with her, or I have spoken with Lucy, how would I say that? We say that by saying j'ai parlé. I have spoken, j'ai parlé. If it was tu, you have spoken, tu as parlé. Il, elle a parlé. Nous avons parlé. Vous avez parlé. Ils, elles ont parlé. Okay? So parler mimics all the thousands of verbs in ER. They'll all be doing the same thing. I've spoken, you have spoken, he, she has spoken, j'ai parlé, tu as parlé, il, elle a parlé. Now what would I do if I was a student of French? I would learn this off by heart. I would take the verb parler, I would write it on a sheet of paper, I would chop off those two last letters because we don't need them. That's what happens in slow motion. We're getting rid of ER, we're working with the stem, and we're adding on E with an accent. And by the way, if you ever see an accent on the letter E, it's there for a purpose. It changes the sound of it becomes E. That's why we have an accent on the E. It changes the sound of it. We can never ignore it. So j'ai parlé, tu as parlé, and we notice they're all the same. Parler, 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 6 times. It's quite easy. Just learn it off by heart. I would learn it off by heart, write it down, make sure you understand that, because that's a blueprint of the rest of it. So let's continue with parler. As it says here, this verb is used with avoir, which is the action of having. I have, as most French verbs are, most of them will use the verb have. I have been, I have done, I have seen, I have repaired, all these actions, except 17 verbs. There's a small exception. Let's now go to arriver. Now, why is it different? Because instead of using avoir, we use être, which is the action of being. So in French, you don't say I have arrived. You say I am arrived. There's 17 verbs that do this. And to reassure you, it's not a crazy French thing. German does the same thing, Dutch does the same thing, and I'm sure many other languages do that also. There are a few verbs that used the verb to be. So this also means that you can't say j'ai arrivé. You cannot say I have arrived. You must say I am arrived. Je suis arrivé means I've arrived. Je suis arrivé, tu es arrivé, il est arrivé, nous sommes arrivés, vous êtes arrivés, ils sont arrivés. Now I'm adding some sounds here, what you might have picked up on. It essentially makes it more elegant. You don't have to, but it's just considered more elegant. So in slow motion, je suis arrivé. I'm linking with a Z, a Z. Je suis arrivé. If you do it, it's better. It's more elegant. Tu es arrivé, a Z also. Tu es arrivé, je suis arrivé. Il est arrivé with a T. You can do that. You don't have to. Some people say il est arrivé. But you can also say il est arrivé. Nous sommes arrivés with a Z. Nous sommes arrivés. Vous êtes arrivés. Very, very elegant. Vous êtes arrivés. And ils sont arrivés with a T once more. So we have two of them that link with a T. Il est arrivé. Ils sont arrivés. You don't have to. It's just considered prettier. So typically, how would you use that? Well, you'd phone someone and you say, oh, I'm there, I've arrived. You're expecting to be picked up in a car. I'm here, I've arrived, or in front of someone's house. What number do you live? Je suis arrivé, I've arrived, I'm here. Or if a plane's arrived or a taxi's arrived, oh, il est arrivé, the taxi has arrived. Because of course, objects can be il, he. Il est arrivé, he, the taxi, le taxi, il est arrivé, he arrived. So that's typically the use you would make of that. And as it says at the bottom of the page, only a small selection of verbs are used with être. All the others are used with avoir. I'm moving on to page number 3. Page number 3 informs us of the construction according to verb type. You could write this down and remember this, because this is essentially the formula of what awaits you. If you understand this page, you understand what's going to happen to thousands of verbs. So Typically, I teach the ER and the IR verbs together because they behave in the same way, meaning we chop them up in exactly the same place. So ER and IR are very similar in French. We simply chop off ER from the verb and add on the ending, which never changes. It's always E. Taking as an example, parler, we took off ER, we added E, j'ai parlé. Habiter, live, to reside somewhere, to live. If you say, oh yeah, I lived in New York, j'ai habité, I lived in New York. In this example is nous, we have lived. We lived in New York, nous avons habité. Nous avons habité. We could have done this 1,000 times more. They all behave in the same way. So if you remember this, you can apply it to as many verbs as you like. Number 2, we have the IR verbs, which are very similar to the ER verbs in the sense that they behave in the same way. You know, we have as an example finir, which is to finish something. Well, we take off IR, chop off those 2 last letters. The only difference is we don't add E accent, we add the letter I. And we know that the letter I only has one pronunciation. In French, it's I. I have finished, j'ai fini. So when would you use that? Well, I don't know, in a classroom. I finished, j'ai fini. Did you ever finish that film? Yes, j'ai fini le film. I finished the film. That's how you express it. You're expressing, you're sharing the existence of an action, something you did or something that happened. J'ai fini. Now there are a few also that take the letter U. There are not many at all, and we have the list here on the same page. There's a few minor verbs that take the letter U and not the letter I. These should be considered exceptions to the rule. Like, for example, obtenir, which to obtain, that's what it means, to obtain. And also I'll draw your attention to the fact that obtenir is just a variant of tenir. Tenir means to hold, to grip onto something. Obtenir is just a variant of the same thing. Détenir, to detain, we can do the same thing in English. To obtain, to detain, to ascertain, if it existed in French, which it doesn't, but these are all variants of the same thing. So obtenir, j'ai obtenu, I have obtained, j'ai obtenu. I obtained the answer, I obtained whatever it is. So nous avons obtenu. It's different because it takes the letter U, but in normal cases they take the letter I. And the next example is ouvrir. Now I think there are only, I'm going to check, 3 or 4 that take R. Yeah, there are 4 that take the letters, the ending R, and they are cut off a bit earlier. So it's not 2 letters were taken off, it's 3. Ouvrir means to open. J'ai ouvert, I opened the window, that's how you would say it. J'ai ouvert, or tu as ouvert, you have opened. And it's pronounced R. R. It's pronounced R. ERT is R, like the letter R. J'ai ouvert, tu as ouvert. As a conclusion, what should we remember of this? We should remember of this that ER and IR are the biggest group, the easiest group to learn. We usually learn them together because we notice that all we have to do is take off those 2 last letters. When it comes to the ER ones, we just place that letter E, and when it comes to the IR ones, E, we just place the letter I. The ER and the IR are the most predictable ones. We only need to cut off the 2 last letters and add on the ending. For the ER ones, it will always be E. And for the IR ones, the normal letter is I. But some IR verbs take U. There are 3 that you need to remember, so I would write them down. Tenir equals U. Courir equals U. Venir equals U. So those 3 take the letter U. These are the 3 that you need to know. And some take R. There are 4. So we need to remember that there are 7 that are different. Holding, running and coming, tenir, courir, venir, and opening, offering, suffering and covering. And you can probably already work out that you won't use covering very often, so it's not that big of a thing to remember. And in the examples, what do we have? We have tenir, to hold, I held the door. J'ai tenu la porte. J'ai tenu la porte. It is an IR one, but it's one of those that you need to remember that takes the letter U. It's an exception. Courir, to run. J'ai couru. Très vite, I ran very fast. J'ai couru. That's another one that could have use in your everyday use of French. Ouvrir, to open. I would advise you to remember this one. Tu as ouvert. You opened the door. Tu as ouvert. Venir, to come. Now that's it's a different one because je suis, I am come to see you. We don't say I have come to see you, but we'll see in a second how they work. But you can already remember that venir takes the letter U and not the letter I. Je suis venu te voir. I came to see you. I have come to see you. Offrir, he offered a present. Il a offert un cadeau. It can be useful in French to know that one. Offrir, il a offert un cadeau. And the last one is souffrir. On a souffert, we suffered. It's one of the four that takes R. On a souffert. You wouldn't use it very often over the course of a year, but these 7 you might want to remember. Certainly ouvrir. Offering could be useful, but suffering and covering, as in the snow covered the lawn, or even I covered the table. J'ai couvert la table. Okay, let's move on to point number 4. Now here we have some verbs that unfortunately are a little less predictable. These are the RE ones. So these we have to study individually. And in this is the list that I recommend you know. There's a lot more verbs to study individually, but I think it has to be done. And these are the ones I think that you will realistically use. Let's start with group 2. There are 3 verbs that are split right down the middle. Connaître, to know, to have knowledge of something. Disparaître, to disappear. And comprendre, to comprehend, to understand. Why are these 3 different? They're split right down the middle. Connaître becomes connu. We split them right down the middle. J'ai connu, I knew. J'ai connu. Disparaître, I disappeared, j'ai disparu. I disappeared, j'ai disparu. Cut it right down the middle. And comprendre, j'ai compris. And this time it takes IS, but the S is silent. So j'ai compris is your way to say, oh, I understood. Okay, thanks, I understood. J'ai compris. Disparaître, perhaps used with objects. The keys have disappeared, something's disappeared, the sun has disappeared, le soleil a disparu, mes clés ont disparu, my keys have disappeared. J'ai connu, probably not used that much. What we can do next is look at group 1. These are considered the regular ones, those that have less of a surprise. You notice that they all take the letter U, except one. So the normal behavior is just take off those 2 last letters. Entendre means to hear. J'ai entendu. I heard a noise. J'ai entendu. Next one is rendre, to give back something. J'ai rendu. J'ai rendu, I gave back an object to someone. J'ai rendu. Vendre, to sell, like a street vendor. J'ai vendu. We can see a pattern here emerging clearly. Attendre, to wait. J'ai attendu. I waited for the bus, for my taxi. J'ai attendu. Now here we have suivre, to follow. J'ai suivi. This one takes the letter I. J'ai suivi. There's one that does that. Dépendre, j'ai dépendu. Okay, not super used. Maybe it's not important. And défendre, j'ai défendu. I can imagine context in which we speak about sport or things like that. J'ai défendu, or defending a point of view. J'ai défendu. So in group 1, if I were a student of French, I write all of these down, maybe even give them numbers and have that grid fully memorized. I heard, I gave back, I sold, I waited, I followed, I depended on, I defended. Those 2 last ones might not be really used a lot, Now, next we have group 3, and these are highly unpredictable. Group 3 is highly unpredictable. So first of all we have croire, which is to believe. Then we have prendre, which is to take. Lire, which means to read. Mettre, to put or to place. So if I place something on the table, it's going to be mettre, very, very much used. Être, to be, certainly very used. Vivre, to live, to be alive or to reside somewhere. And boire, which is to drink. And I don't think it's used that much, because it doesn't happen to me very often to tell people what I drank. These are very unpredictable because they change completely. So if you don't know them, you can't guess. So you really have to study them individually. Croire, I believed. When would we use it practically? For example, I believed for a short while that this was true, but then I quickly understood that it wasn't true. J'ai cru que, I believed that, and then normally you combine this with a second past tense. J'ai cru, but it's still useful to know it. J'ai cru, C-R-U. Prendre, when would you use that? Well, to inform someone, I took your coat, I took your car, I took. J'ai pris, P-R-I-S, j'ai pris, the S is silent. J'ai pris is I took. Lire, to read. I read an article, I read a book. J'ai lu, L-U, very unpredictable. J'ai lu. Mettre, to put or to place. I put the water in the fridge. I put the book back on the bookcase. J'ai mis, M-I-S, S is silent. J'ai mis, I put or I placed. Être, to be. Être is quite useful when we start to see the passive in French. So, I have been, I was seen, or I was pushed over, or I was welcomed when something is done to me. So, j'ai été, tu as été, it will be useful certainly later on. Vivre, j'ai vécu, if you want to communicate that you lived in a place for a short while, for a few years, and you want to say, oh, I lived in New York for a while. J'ai vécu à New York, for example. Or if you want to speak about historical people, Napoleon lived in France in the 1800s. Napoléon a vécu, it could happen. And boire, if you want to inform people what you drank. J'ai bu un café. So these you have to study individually. And lastly, in group 4 we have écrire, to write, dire, to say, faire, to do or to make, conduire, to drive, décrire, to describe, détruire, to destroy, construire, to construct or to build, éteindre, to switch off. There is actually a verb in French to say switch off, that's éteindre, and sourire, to smile. These are the verbs that realistically might come up in a conversation. On the next page we have this bright yellow page. This is the conjugation of the verbs, the ER ones that you should know and study. So we have connaître, to know. As you can see, it's split right down the middle. J'ai connu, tu as connu, il a connu, nous avons connu, vous avez connu, ils ont connu. This is one that you might have a use for. Disparaître, to disappear. J'ai disparu, tu as disparu, il a disparu, he disappeared. This is how we study French. You know, you have to drill, you have to do drills. Even native speakers learn it in the same way in school. Comprendre, to understand, to comprehend. J'ai compris. And you can follow it by I understood why, I understood how, I understood where. J'ai compris pourquoi, j'ai compris comment, I understood how, and so forth. That's quite useful. Croire, if you believed something for a short while, like, oh, I was mistaken, I thought the entrance was here, it's over there, you know. J'ai cru, for a short while I believed. Prendre, to take, to inform someone that you you took the motorway, that you took a coat, that you took your phone with you. It could be very useful. J'ai pris, silent S, tu as pris, il a pris. Lire, to read, informs someone that you read something. J'ai lu, tu as lu, elle a lu, nous avons lu. Mettre, to put or to place. J'ai mis, tu as mis, il a mis, etc. It's all the same, silent S. Être, j'ai été, tu as été, il a été. Now there's a funny thing with être, is that certain people will say j'ai été, like I have been, as a way to say I have gone. So they'll say j'ai été en ville, I have been to town, instead of I have gone to town. Normally the correct way is to say je suis allé. It's one of the 17 that's used with être. So I have gone to town, je suis allé en ville. But a lot of people say j'ai été, I have been, instead of I have gone to town. We see this quite a lot, j'ai été. But this is certainly worth learning because you will need it later on for the passive. For example, if you want to say something like I was welcomed, j'ai été accueilli. It's a passive sentence because you're not doing anything. Someone welcomed you, so you were receiving the action of being welcomed. For example, if you want to say, I have been paid, so you're receiving the payment, you're not really doing anything. You're receiving the action of being paid. This is a passive sentence. J'ai été payé. I have been paid. For this reason alone, it's necessary to learn, because you will need it later on. So j'ai été, tu as été, il a été. Vivre can have some use when you want to tell people that for a short while you lived in a certain place. J'ai vécu, tu as vécu, il a vécu, and so forth. Faire is certainly very used. J'ai fait, tu as fait, il a fait, nous avons fait, vous avez fait, elles ont fait. Anything that you did or that you made, that will be useful. Also, dire, to say. J'ai dit, tu as dit, il a dit, and boire, if you want to tell people what you drank. J'ai bu, tu as bu, il a bu. So I would recommend that you learn everything on this yellow page. Let's move on to the next one. Number 6, conjugating OIR verbs. This class of verb is very, very small. We're not making any new ones, but they are very, very useful, important, necessary, crucial, because they are used all the time, because they contain the modal verbs. Modal verbs are special verbs like I must, I can, I want. They're not actions, they're states, and we use them all the time. So devoir is the action of having to do something. There's an obligation, I must. So in English we say I had to do this, j'ai dû. And what you do next, of course, is you place an action. What did you have to do? The action that you were in a position of having to do. J'ai dû, we can use faire. I had to do. J'ai dû faire. I was in a position of having to do something. J'ai dû faire. If you had to eat something, j'ai dû manger. You'll always place an infinitive next to that one. J'ai dû manger. I had to eat. I had to leave. J'ai dû partir. So you were in a position of having to leave. That's why it's so crucial to know this. J'ai dû, tu as dû, il a dû. They're all the same, by the way. It's very cyclic. So do 6 times. J'ai dû, j'ai dû, j'ai dû. The little hat on the do, by the way, the only purpose of it is for spelling. It doesn't change the sound. We put a little hat just to disambiguate with the other do that doesn't have a hat. So j'ai dû just signals people, watch out, this is a verb. That's the only reason for that hat on the little do. Next, pouvoir, which will work in the same way as this one. And they all rhyme in U, by the way. They will all rhyme in the letter U. J'ai pu, I was able to do something. This could mean physically able, mentally able, or you had the go-ahead from someone, you had a permission, you had the green light. Did you have authorization? J'ai pu partir. I was allowed to leave. I was able to leave. J'ai pu, what? Partir. I was able to leave. Pouvoir, if you look at it, it's the power, pouvoir. I had the power, I had the ability to do something. J'ai pu partir. I was able to leave. Nous avons pu, vous avez pu. They're all the same, really. What you need to know is pu, pu. J'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons. That will never change. It's always the same thing. Number 3, vouloir, to want something. I wanted to what? Wanting is not an action. I wanted to what? To write, to eat, to leave, to stay, to sleep. J'ai voulu. Let's say I wanted to leave. J'ai voulu, action of leaving. J'ai voulu partir. That's how we use it. Did you want to call me? Tu as voulu m'appeler. Oh, you wanted to call me. Tu as voulu m'appeler. That's how we use it. Il a voulu. What did he want to do? He wanted to. Il a voulu boire. He wanted to drink. Il a voulu boire. So you're informing someone of something that happened or that you did. I wanted to do, he wanted to do something. Il a voulu boire. That's how we use these verbs. Number 4, avoir, to have. J'ai eu, elle a eu, j'ai, tu, il, elle. J'ai eu, tu as eu, il a eu, nous avons eu, vous avez eu. And despite the fact that we write it EU, it is still the same sound as U. They all rhyme. So because some people start to say j'ai eu, no, it's the same thing. U. No difference at all. Spelling here doesn't tell us of a variant in sound. It's all the same. So j'ai eu. What could I have had? J'ai eu. I had a surprise. J'ai eu une surprise. I had a surprise. Tu as eu. What did you have? Tu as eu ma lettre. Did you get my letter? And by the way, having can also be used as receiving. Did you have my letter? Did you receive my letter? Tu as eu ma lettre. We often use having as receiving. So j'ai eu une surprise. I had a surprise. Tu as eu ma lettre. You had my letter. Or we can turn it into a question. Did you have my letter? Tu as eu ma lettre? So that's avoir. Number 5, savoir. That's sort of a strange one. J'ai su. If you want to describe something, for a very short while, I knew. So I didn't know what to answer, for example. For a very short while, j'ai su. You know, I didn't know what to do for a very short while. That's how you use that one. J'ai su, elles ont su. But would you use it very often? Not really. J'ai su, tu as su, il a su. We don't use it that often, realistically. For example, a realistic use of savoir in the passé composé. How did you know where to find me? How did you perform the action of finding? Comment tu as su où me trouver, for example. Comment tu as su où me trouver. This could be a realistic use of savoir, but it's not used very, very often. Next is pleuvoir. Very easy. It rained yesterday. Il a plu. Obviously, pleuvoir is only used with il, which is the translation of it. It rained. Il a plu. So that's one less on the list. Recevoir, to say that you received something. J'ai reçu. The little hook on the C indicates to the reader that you're really reading an S. That's the purpose of the little hook on the C. J'ai reçu, if you want to inform someone that you received a present. J'ai reçu un cadeau. That's how we use that one. Elle a reçu. She received. Number 8, falloir. Now that's a very odd one. It's only used with il. And it sort of means the same thing as devoir, must. So falloir is sort of like devoir. And in English we have the same thing with should and ought. I should do this and I ought to do this. It's sort of very close, isn't it? I should leave, I ought to leave. There's a very, you almost have to be a native speaker to see the difference. So falloir is used with il faut, il a fallu. Now this means it was necessary to do. There was an obligation. Il a fallu, and it's not il as in he, it's it. It was necessary to. Il a fallu réparer. So it was necessary to repair. It was necessary to repair the car. Il a fallu réparer la voiture. And in the present tense it becomes il faut. You've probably heard il faut. Il faut réparer la voiture is now. One must repair the car. It is necessary to repair the car. Il a fallu réparer la voiture. It was necessary to repair the car. That's how we use il a fallu. Décevoir, to disappoint, usually when something disappoints us. Like the film disappointed me, il m'a déçu. The film me disappointed, le film m'a déçu. But if you disappoint someone, obviously it becomes j'ai déçu. I disappointed my parents for my school results, haven't we all? J'ai déçu mes parents, for example. Vous avez déçu, and again we have the little hook on the C, which tells people that it's really an S. And apercevoir, that means to spot something in the distance. If you want to tell someone, I spotted someone in a crowd, or I spotted a bird on the horizon. J'ai aperçu un oiseau. I spotted a bird in the distance. That's what it means, to spot something. Voilà, so we have 10 of them. 2 of them are exactly the same with il. So il faut and il a plu. Il a fallu, sorry, and il a plu. That's quite easy. They're only used with one person. And for the rest, I would strongly encourage you to know devoir, j'ai dû. I would strongly encourage you to know pouvoir, j'ai pu. Number 3, vouloir, j'ai voulu. Number 4, avoir, yes. I would encourage you to know those 4 as a priority. Those 4, certainly those 4. Right, let's move on to the passé composé with être. The passé composé with être, what does that mean? So there's a little drawing that's appearing on the screen. So within all the verbs of the French tense, a majority use the formula that we've seen so far. I have, you have, he has, we have, j'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons. But there's a very small minority that use être, I am, you are, he is, instead of I have. So just a few of them, there's about 17 of them, use être instead of avoir to build the passé composé. And these are important to know as much as the others. They are used very often. So we saw in point 2 at the beginning of the worksheet, arriver, to arrived. We say, je suis arrivé, I am arrived. We never say, I am, j'ai arrivé. It doesn't exist. Je suis arrivé. If we leave, we say, nous sommes partis. Nous sommes, we are left. We are gone. You might wonder why there's an extra E between brackets. What's the purpose of this? Well, the big difference with j'ai is that je suis sort of acts like an adjective. It's like beau and belle. Il est beau, elle est belle. It's an adjective that tells something about the subject. Is the subject masculine? Is the subject feminine? Is the subject plural? Now it's a French thing in French spelling that when we say je suis arrivé, I am arrived, because we're using être, the verb to be, the verb sort of acts like an adjective. So what we do with je suis beau, tu es belle, we also do with verbs. This is why we have an extra E. Je suis arrivé, because the subject might be feminine. It might be a girl who says je suis arrivé, and she is supposed to spell je suis arrivé with an E. You can't hear it, but you're supposed to write it. Nous sommes partis. If I write it ES, well, I can conclude that nous is a group of girls, or feminine group of whatever. It could be flowers, it could be, I don't know, foxes, elephants, that doesn't matter. If a fox could speak in a child's story, why not? Children's stories. But je suis arrivé, extra E, to mark the feminine. Nous sommes partis, well, we can conclude that nous is a group of girls. Unless there wasn't an E, then it would be a mixed group or just a group of males. And we have 4 examples here to illustrate this. From 1 to 4, je suis arrivé. Well, just by reading that, I know that je is a man, or a masculine subject. Probably shouldn't say man, but The subject is a masculine singular. It's one male thing. Je suis arrivé, I am arrived. It's a man speaking, male speaking. Number 2, tu es arrivé. A reader of French will know that tu is a feminine subject. It will be a lady, a girl. The subject is feminine, one feminine person speaking. Vous êtes arrivé, es at the end. The subject is feminine plural. Who could it be? It could be, I don't know, a sports team comprised of ladies. Vous êtes arrivé, the girls have arrived, the feminine football team. Oh, you have arrived. We can't hear it, but we write it. Vous êtes arrivé. And nous sommes arrivés, we have arrived. Well, the subject is masculine plural. It's a group of men, or a mixed group. And people say that French is a sexist language because if the group is mixed, men and female, it becomes masculine. We don't, by default, if it's mixed, we use the masculine. Nous sommes arrivés. But the truth of the matter is there's a difference between real-life gender and grammatical gender. What we're actually doing is that the masculine is also the neutral. So when it's mixed, masculine and feminine, nous sommes arrivés, we can consider that we're using the neutral. It doesn't represent any of the two genders. Masculine equals neutral. Point number 8, we have the list of verbs used with ETRE. For the ER verbs, we have aller, to go in a certain direction. Monter, to go upwards, as in a staircase. Passer, to pass, to pass by the bank, to pass by somewhere. Arriver, to arrive. Rester, to stay, to remain. Retourner, to return, to go back. It doesn't mean returning the book at the library. It means going back from whence I came. Tomber, to fall down, as in tripping, falling, stumbling, falling down. And entrer, to enter, to step into a room. So practically, if we want to say, I went somewhere, we would say, je suis allé. If it's a place, it will often be used with à. Je suis allé à New York. I went to New York. Je suis allé. Monter, je suis monté. For example, you go to Disney World. Did you go into at the top of the castle? Je suis monté dans le château. I went into the castle, up into the castle, the highest tower, for example, or the Eiffel Tower, if it's in France. Passé, je suis passé. Did you see Boston when you traveled to America? We went through Boston. We passed by Boston. Je suis passé par Boston. We didn't actually stay there. We just passed through it. Je suis passé par Boston. We went by Boston. We passed through Boston. Je suis passé. Arrivé. Je suis arrivé. I've arrived. We saw the example at the beginning of this video. Je suis arrivé. Rester. To remain. We remained in Boston for a week. Je suis resté à Boston pendant une semaine, or nous sommes restés à Boston pendant une semaine. We don't say j'ai resté, we say we are remained, I am remained, je suis resté. Retourner, I left Boston, I went back to New York. Je suis retourné à New York. Je suis retourné, tu es retourné, il est retourné. I went back. Tomber, je suis tombé, I fell down. I hurt myself, I fell down. Je suis tombé, we don't say j'ai tombé, je suis tombé. If it's an object, same thing, the bottle fell down. La bouteille est tombée. Now here you notice that there's an extra E, why? Because la bouteille is feminine. So the bottle is fallen, I'm supposed to add an extra E for the feminine. La bouteille est tombée. And je suis entré, I went into the parking, for example, with my car. Je suis entré dans le parking. If je is a feminine person, then there will be an extra E. If je is masculine, there won't be. Je suis entré dans le parking. Je suis entré dans le parking. In both cases, you can't hear the difference. Next, we have the IR verbs. Partir, to depart, to leave, to go away. Devenir, to become, is just a variant of venir. Devenir is to become. sortir, to go out, to go outdoors. Venir, to come. And mourir is a special one, to die. So, partir, je suis parti. I left, I went away. For example, I left at 8 o'clock. Je suis parti à 8 heures. I left at 8 o'clock, and of course, if je is feminine, we add an extra E. Je suis parti à 8 heures. Je suis parti à 8 heures, that's how we use it. Devenir, to become. For example, I became impatient. Je suis devenu impatient. And here it's interesting because if it's feminine, je suis devenu impatiente. And here we clearly see that the adjective takes an E, which we hear now because of the T. Impatiente. Impatiente. Je suis devenu impatiente. Je suis devenu impatiente. I became impatient if it's a feminine person speaking. Je suis sorti. I went outdoors to breathe a bit of fresh air. Je suis sorti. Tu es sorti, il est sorti, and so forth. Venir, je suis venu. I came to tell you something. Je suis venu pour te dire bonjour. I came to say hello to you. Je suis venu pour te dire bonjour. And if it's a feminine person, je suis venu pour te dire bonjour, extra E, which we can't hear. And mourir, this changes radically. Je suis mort. And we sometimes use it figuratively, you know, oh, I'm dying, I'm so tired, oh, je suis mort. People say that, you know, in French, je suis mort. I'm exhausted, je suis mort. And if it's the feminine, it's je suis morte. And it's actually the only one that you can actually hear between the feminine and the masculine. Je suis mort, je suis morte. So you can actually hear that one. And then we have, for the RE ones, descendre and naître. Je suis descendu, I went down, for example, into the cellar. There's really not many applications for this one. Je suis descendu dans la cave, and the cave, of course, in English is something else, but the cave in French is the cellar. Je suis descendu dans la cave, so I went down myself into the cellar. I'm taking my own person down into the cellar, and this distinction is quite important. Je suis descendu, and of course it's a feminine person, there's an extra E. And naître, to be born. So if someone asks you where you were born, well, in French it's actually I am born. It's not I was born, it's I am born. Je suis né à Washington. I was born in Washington. You actually say I am born in Washington. Je suis né à Washington. And if it's a girl, of course, je suis né à Washington. Je suis né à Washington. Voilà. To push things further, we also have to speak about those that are used with both avoir and être. Now, I won't pretend it's a big problem, because it's not. It's not something that might ever affect your life, but it's nice to know that it does exist. For example, the first two is monter and descendre. Monter, go upwards, descendre, go downwards. There's a difference in French between bringing your own self down and bringing an object up or down. It's a bit different. So if you say je suis monté, I went up into the castle at Disney World. Je suis descendu, I went down into the cellar. So you're bringing your own self down. But there is a difference between bringing your own self down and bringing an object down. So if you took the suitcase upstairs, j'ai monté la valise. It's not je suis monté la valise. You can't. I myself, it doesn't work. I have brought the object upstairs, upwards. J'ai monté la valise. And you can also say j'ai monté une pièce de théâtre. I organised a play at the theatre. I organised a play. J'ai monté, that's the way you say it. J'ai monté une pièce de théâtre. Next we have descendre, which is exactly the same logic. Between bringing yourself downstairs and bringing something downstairs, there's a difference. J'ai descendu la valise. I brought the suitcase down. J'ai descendu la valise. On a descendu la rivière. We went down the river. On a descendu la rivière. Next we have entrer, which means to enter. You're entering your code. You're not entering your own self, of course. It's the same logic. I entered my code, but then again, how many times are you going to say this within a year, within 10 years? Not many times. It's really marginal, but it's nice to know it exists. J'ai entré mon code. I entered my code, like as in your 4-digit PIN code. J'ai entré mon code. We don't say je suis entré mon code. I have entered my code. Then we have retourner. Now this is very special. It's funny because I actually heard my parents say it the other day because they had lost their keys. No, their little wallet with the credit cards, and they turned the house upside down, and they actually used this the other day, less than a week ago. So j'ai retourné la maison. What does that mean? I returned the house. I turned the house upside down. How many times will you use it? Not many. So there's a difference between saying je suis retourné, I went back to where I came from whence I came, and j'ai retourné la maison, which means I turned the house upside down. J'ai retourné la maison. It's not very used. How many times realistically will you use it? Passé. Difference between I passed by Boston, but I didn't stop there. We went through Boston. Je suis passé par Boston. And passing the salt to someone, same as in English. J'ai passé le sel. I have passed the object of the salt. We don't say je suis passé le sel. We say j'ai passé le sel. That's the reason we have j'ai here. And finally, sortir, which answers to the same logic as monter and descendre. There's a difference between bringing something upstairs, downstairs, or outside, and bringing your own self outside. If you say je suis sorti, it really means I went outside, or it could even mean I went out to a party. Je suis sorti hier soir. I went out last night. But it's different from bringing the dog out, or bringing la poubelle is the trash in American, the dustbins in English, British English. J'ai sorti la poubelle. I brought the bins out. And tu as sorti le chien. You brought the dog out. There's a difference between bringing something out and bringing your own self out. And to conclude on this, before doing the exercises, we have another yellow sheet here with a conjugation of the verbs with être. You need to know the ones in green, obviously. I am, you are, he is. I'll read through them. Je suis allé. I went. I'm doing a liaison here. I'm linking the sounds. Je suis z. Je suis allé. You don't have to do it. You can do it. It's more elegant. Je suis allé. You can also say je suis allé. Je suis allé. It's less pretty. Je suis allé, if you want to speak properly. Je suis allé. Extra E if the subject is feminine, but we can't hear it anyway. Je suis allé. Tu es allé. I'm doing the same thing. Z. Tu es allé means you went. I went, you went. Il, elle est allé. I'm doing the T. T. Est allé. That's how you speak beautiful French. Il, elle est allé. Nous sommes allés. Nous sommes allés. We went somewhere. Nous sommes allés. Vous êtes allés. Even more elegant. Vous êtes allés. Ils, elles sont allés. And we always have an extra E on all of them in case the subject is feminine, sorry. Ils, elles sont allés. Vous êtes allés. So we will always do those types of linking sounds provided the verb starts with a vowel. In the case of aller, it's A, so obviously we do. But with monter, M, that's a consonant. We wouldn't do that extra sound. So if I went upstairs into the attic, I would say je suis monté. I would not say je suis monté. It's an M, it's not a vowel. Je suis monté, silent. Je suis, silent, monté. Obviously when we speak we accelerate it. Je suis monté. Je suis monté. Tu es monté. Il est monté. Nous sommes montés. Vous êtes montés. Ils, elles sont montés. Then we have partir. Je suis parti. Tu es parti. Il est parti. Same sort of thing. Devenir, to become. Je suis devenu. No surprises there. Je suis sorti. I went outside. I went outdoors. Mourir. And now this is an interesting one. It's an interesting one because it's the only one in which you can actually hear whether the subject is feminine or masculine. Je suis mort. We say, I'm died of fatigue. I'm dead of fatigue. We say that in French. Je suis mort de fatigue. Je suis mort de fatigue. I'm dead of fatigue. I'm exhausted. Je suis mort de fatigue. We can even say I'm dead of hunger. I'm dying of hunger. Je suis mort de faim. Je suis mort de fatigue. If it's a masculine subject, je suis mort. But if je is feminine, you would hear it. Je suis morte with the final T. Je suis morte de faim. Je suis morte de faim. Tu es mort. Il est mort. Nous sommes morts. Silent S for the plural, we don't hear it. Vous êtes mort. Ils sont morts. And if we have a feminine subject, it sounds like je suis morte, tu es morte, elle est morte, nous sommes mortes, vous êtes morte, elles sont mortes. So we actually do hear it on that one. And then venir, je suis venu, tu es venu, il est venu, nous sommes venus, vous êtes venus, ils sont venus. And we have an S for the plural, which we don't hear. Voilà, I came, you came, or I have come. It's each of them have two translations really. Je suis venu, I came, I have come. Naître, useful when you want to say where you were born. Je suis né, tu es né, il est né, nous sommes nés, vous êtes nés, ils sont nés. That's how you say where you were born. And then we have the exercises for which you have the answers. So the passé composé requires a bit of memorization, but is a skill that can be used relatively quickly. What you need to know is what the irregulars are, what the main verbs do, and what the key verbs here. And I do trust that if you can do this worksheet, you really can cover a lot of everyday situations regarding the passé composé. I hope it was useful. This is exclusive to this website. Thank you very much for being a student of OuiCommunicate. I'll see you soon in the lesson. See you soon. Bye.